3 years ago, I was escorted out of TechFlow Industries by security guards while my colleagues watched in stunned silence. My boss, Victoria Chen, had just fired me 2 weeks before the company's IPO would have made me a millionaire. She called me expendable and said I lacked the vision to succeed in Silicon Valley. Last month, I signed the papers to acquire her entire company for $42 million. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Sharon Wilson, and this story begins in the cramped garage of my childhood home in Austin, Texas, where I spent most of my teenage years taking apart computers and rebuilding them with better components. While other kids were at parties, I was learning programming languages and dreaming about the tech revolution happening in California. My parents, both high school teachers, couldn't understand my obsession with technology, but they supported my decision to study computer science at Stanford. College was where everything changed for me. I wasn't just the small-town girl who was good with computers anymore. I was surrounded by brilliant minds, venture capital discussions, and startup ideas that seemed to emerge from every dorm room conversation. During my junior year, I developed a breakthrough algorithm for data compression that would later become the foundation of everything I built. The algorithm could compress large data files by 60% without any quality loss, something that existing technologies struggled to achieve. After graduation, I knew I wanted to work at a cutting-edge tech company, somewhere I could learn from the best while developing my own ideas. TechFlow Industries seemed like the perfect fit. They were a mid-sized company specializing in cloud storage solutions, growing rapidly, and known for their innovative approach to data management. When I interviewed there in 2019, I was impressed by their modern offices in downtown San Francisco, their collaborative culture, and most importantly, their ambitious plans for expansion. Victoria Chen was the vice president of product development at TechFlow when I joined as a senior software engineer. She was 43 years old, had an MBA from Wharton, and had previously worked at several major tech companies, including Microsoft and Google. Victoria had a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. She wore expensive suits, drove a Tesla Model S, and had a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Bay Area. Everyone at TechFlow respected her, and many were intimidated by her direct communication style and perfectionist standards. From my first day, Victoria made it clear that she expected excellence from her team. She would review our code personally, challenge our design decisions, and push us to think bigger about what we were building. Initially, I appreciated this approach. I wanted to learn from someone who had achieved success in Silicon Valley, and Victoria's feedback, though sometimes harsh, always made our projects better. She seemed to recognize my potential and gave me increasingly complex assignments. The dynamic between Victoria and me was complicated from the beginning. She would often single me out in meetings, asking me difficult technical questions that I usually answered correctly. Sometimes this felt like mentorship, other times like testing. Victoria had a way of making you feel like you were part of something important while simultaneously questioning whether you belonged there. She would say things like, "Sharon, you have technical skills, but do you understand the business implications?" Or, "Your code is clean, but can you think strategically about market positioning?" 6 months into my tenure at TechFlow, I proposed implementing my data compression algorithm into their cloud storage platform. I had refined the algorithm significantly since college and believed it could give TechFlow a major competitive advantage. I prepared a comprehensive presentation showing how the technology could reduce storage costs for clients by 40% while improving upload and download speeds. I demonstrated the algorithm working with sample data, projected the potential revenue impact, and outlined a development timeline. Victoria's response was lukewarm at best. She acknowledged that the technology was impressive, but questioned whether it aligned with TechFlow's current strategic priorities. She said the company was focused on scaling their existing services rather than developing new technologies. She also expressed concerns about the resources required for implementation and the potential risks of introducing unproven technology to their production systems. I was disappointed, but understood her perspective and continued working on my regular assignments. Over the following months, I noticed Victoria paying closer attention to my work. She would ask detailed questions about my algorithms, request documentation for my coding approaches, and sometimes assign me to projects that seemed designed to showcase my technical capabilities to other executives. I interpreted this as positive recognition and worked even harder to prove my value to the company. I stayed late, took on additional responsibilities, and consistently delivered high-quality work ahead of deadlines. The relationship between Victoria and me began to shift during my second year at TechFlow. She started making comments about my ambition and whether I was truly committed to the team's success or just focused on advancing my own career. During performance reviews, she would praise my technical skills but criticize my leadership, potential, and strategic thinking. She began excluding me from certain high-level meetings and strategic planning sessions that I had previously been invited to attend. I tried to address these concerns directly with Victoria. I requested a one-on-one meeting where I asked for specific feedback about how I could improve my performance and contribute more effectively to the team's goals. Victoria's response was vague and somewhat condescending. She suggested I needed to develop emotional intelligence and learn to play the long game in corporate environments. She recommended books about business strategy and leadership, but didn't provide concrete examples of where my performance was lacking. Despite the growing tension, I continued excelling in my technical work. I led several successful projects, mentored junior developers, and consistently received positive feedback from colleagues and clients. I also continued developing my data compression algorithm in my spare time, improving its efficiency and exploring potential applications beyond TechFlow's current business model. I kept detailed records of all my innovations, including timestamps, version histories, and performance benchmarks. The IPO announcement came in early 2022. TechFlow had been preparing for this milestone for over a year, and the entire company was energized by the prospect of going public. The initial valuation estimates suggested that even junior employees with stock options would see significant financial benefits. As a senior engineer who had been with the company for 3 years, my stock options were worth approximately $1.8 million based on the projected IPO price of $45 per share. Victoria's behavior became increasingly erratic as the IPO date approached. She seemed stressed about the increased scrutiny from investors and the pressure to demonstrate consistent growth and innovation. She began micromanaging projects more intensively and became critical of work that she had previously approved. She also started making changes to team structures and project assignments, often without clear explanations for her decisions. 2 weeks before the scheduled IPO date, Victoria called me into her office for what I assumed would be a routine project update. Instead, she informed me that my position was being eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring designed to optimize the company's organizational efficiency before going public. She explained that my role was being consolidated with another position, and that my specific skill set was no longer aligned with TechFlow's evolving needs. I was shocked and asked for clarification about what had led to this decision. Victoria's explanation was vague and unsatisfying. She mentioned budget constraints, changing market conditions, and the need for different types of expertise as the company matured. When I pointed out my consistent performance ratings and successful project outcomes, she simply said that business decisions weren't always about individual performance, but rather about strategic positioning for future growth. The termination process was swift and clinical. Human Resources presented me with severance paperwork that included a non-compete clause preventing me from working for TechFlow's competitors for 18 months. My stock options, which would have vested just 2 weeks later with the IPO, were forfeited according to company policy. I was given 2 hours to pack my personal belongings and complete the handover of my current projects to other team members. Walking out of TechFlow's offices with a cardboard box containing 3 years of my professional life was one of the most humiliating experiences I had ever endured. Security guards escorted me to ensure I didn't access any proprietary systems or take any confidential information. Several colleagues watched this process with expressions of sympathy and confusion, but no one spoke up or questioned what was happening. That evening, I sat in my small apartment in Mountain View, trying to process what had just occurred. I felt betrayed, angry, and completely blindsided by Victoria's decision. I had dedicated myself to TechFlow's success, worked countless overtime hours, and consistently delivered exceptional results. The financial impact was devastating. Losing $1.8 million in stock options 2 weeks before they would have vested felt like being robbed of my future security and independence. The first month after leaving TechFlow was a blur of rejection emails and awkward networking conversations. The non-compete clause Victoria had forced me to sign severely limited my options in Silicon Valley. Every tech company I approached either competed directly with TechFlow or had business relationships that made hiring me complicated. I spent my days sending applications to startups in Austin, Denver, and Seattle, anywhere that might value my skills without the legal complications. My savings account dwindled rapidly. The cost of living in Mountain View had consumed most of my TechFlow salary, and I had never anticipated needing an emergency fund this substantial. I downgraded everything, canceled my gym membership, switched to a cheaper phone plan, started buying generic groceries, and began seriously considering whether I could afford to stay in California. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was struggling financially while watching TechFlow's stock price climb steadily after their successful IPO. During this period, I discovered something that changed everything. While organizing my personal files and backup drives, I found early versions of my data compression algorithm dating back to my Stanford days. I had been meticulous about documenting my work, and these files clearly showed the development timeline of my technology. More importantly, they proved that my algorithm was entirely independent of anything I had learned or developed while working at TechFlow. I started researching patent applications and was surprised to discover that TechFlow had filed several patents related to data compression technology just 3 weeks after my termination. The patent applications listed Victoria Chen as the primary inventor, with 2 other TechFlow engineers as co-inventors. The technical descriptions in these patents were remarkably similar to the algorithm I had developed at Stanford and refined during my time at TechFlow. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. This discovery ignited something fierce inside me. Victoria hadn't just fired me to eliminate a potential threat to her position. She had stolen my technology and was now claiming it as her own innovation. I realized that my termination wasn't about budget constraints or strategic restructuring. It was about removing the original creator of the technology so she could take complete credit for what would likely become TechFlow's most valuable intellectual property. I contacted Marcus Rodriguez, a patent attorney in Palo Alto, who specialized in intellectual property disputes in the tech industry. Marcus had handled several high-profile cases involving algorithm theft and had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless when protecting his clients' innovations. Our initial consultation lasted 3 hours as I walked him through my documentation, timeline, and the similarities between my original work and TechFlow's recent patent applications. Marcus was cautiously optimistic about our chances. He explained that proving prior invention would be challenging but not impossible, especially given my thorough documentation. However, he also warned me about the costs involved in fighting a well-funded corporation like TechFlow. Patent litigation could easily cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and take years to resolve. As someone currently unemployed with limited savings, this seemed like an impossible battle to fight. Instead of pursuing immediate legal action, Marcus suggested a different strategy. He recommended that I focus on building my own company around the technology while simultaneously establishing a clear public record of my ownership and innovation timeline. If I could successfully commercialize the algorithm independently, it would strengthen any future legal claims and potentially make TechFlow's stolen patents worthless. The idea of starting my own company had always been a distant dream, something I might consider after gaining more experience and building up capital. But suddenly, it felt like my only viable path forward. I had the technology, I understood the market opportunity, and I had nothing left to lose. The question was whether I could execute a business plan with no funding, no connections, and 18 months of legal restrictions on working with established competitors. I moved back to Austin to reduce my expenses and be closer to my family. During this transition, my parents were supportive but worried about my decision to start a company instead of finding another stable job. They didn't understand the tech industry well enough to grasp the potential value of what I was building, but they offered me their garage as a workspace and helped cover my basic living expenses while I developed my business plan. Working 18-hour days in my parents' garage felt like returning to my teenage years. Except now, I was building something that could revolutionize data storage instead of just experimenting with computers. I refined my algorithm further, developed a user-friendly interface, and began testing the technology with different types of data files. The results consistently exceeded my original projections. I was achieving compression rates of up to 70% with zero quality loss. The business model I developed focused on small and medium-sized businesses that needed efficient cloud storage solutions but couldn't afford enterprise-level contracts with companies like TechFlow. My technology could offer them the same compression capabilities at a fraction of the cost. I called my company Data Vault Solutions and positioned it as the democratization of advanced storage technology for businesses that had been ignored by larger providers. Finding initial customers proved easier than I had anticipated. I started by reaching out to local Austin businesses, accounting firms, marketing agencies, architectural studios, anyone who dealt with large files regularly. I offered free trials of my compression software and was amazed by the enthusiasm of early adopters. These businesses had been paying substantial monthly fees for cloud storage and were thrilled to discover technology that could reduce their costs by 60% while improving performance. My first major breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jennifer Martinez, who ran a digital marketing agency in Austin, became one of my beta users and was so impressed with the technology that she introduced me to her network of business contacts. Jennifer had previously worked at a venture capital firm in Dallas and understood the potential scale of what I was building. She offered to help me prepare investor presentations and connect me with potential funding sources. Through Jennifer's connections, I secured a meeting with Blake Thompson, a partner at Lone Star Ventures, a mid-sized venture capital firm based in Dallas. Blake specialized in enterprise software investments and had a track record of identifying companies with disruptive technologies. Our initial meeting lasted 4 hours as I demonstrated my compression algorithm and explained the market opportunity I was targeting. Blake was immediately interested but wanted to see proof of market demand before discussing investment terms. He challenged me to acquire 100 paying customers within 6 months and achieve $50,000 in monthly recurring revenue. These targets seemed ambitious given my limited resources, but Blake explained that demonstrating market traction was essential for securing the funding I would need to scale the business effectively. I accepted Blake's challenge and threw myself into customer acquisition with desperate intensity. I cold-called businesses across Texas, attended networking events, presented at small business conferences, and even set up booths at local trade shows. My pitch was simple. I could reduce their data storage costs by half while improving their file transfer speeds. Most prospects were skeptical initially, but the technology demonstrations were consistently compelling. The breakthrough moment came when I landed a contract with Thompson and Associates, a mid-sized architectural firm in Houston that handled large CAD files and 3D renderings. Their monthly cloud storage bills were approaching $8,000, and they were constantly frustrated by slow upload and download speeds that impacted their project timelines. After implementing my compression technology, their costs dropped to $3,000 monthly, while their file transfer speeds increased by 400%. Word spread quickly through the architectural community in Houston. Thompson and Associates principal architect Robert Kim was so impressed with the results that he recommended my technology to his professional network. Within 2 months, I had signed contracts with 6 additional architectural firms, 2 engineering companies, and a construction management company. Each new customer became a reference point for additional sales. By month 5 of Blake's challenge, I had exceeded his targets. Data Vault Solutions had acquired 137 paying customers, generating $68,000 in monthly recurring revenue. More importantly, customer retention was perfect. No one who had implemented my technology had canceled their subscription. The value proposition was simply too compelling for businesses that had experienced the cost savings and performance improvements firsthand. Blake was impressed by these results and offered to lead a Series A funding round for Data Vault Solutions. The proposed investment was $2.8 million in exchange for 25% equity, valuing my 18-month-old company at approximately $11 million. The funding would allow me to hire a team, expand our marketing efforts, and develop additional features that customers had requested. Accepting Blake's investment offer felt like validation of everything I had sacrificed and risked over the previous year and a half. I was no longer the unemployed engineer who had been escorted out of TechFlow by security guards. I was the founder and CEO of a growing technology company with satisfied customers, strong financial backing, and unlimited potential for expansion. During the due diligence process for the Series A funding, Blake's team discovered TechFlow's patent applications related to data compression technology. This raised immediate red flags about potential intellectual property conflicts that could threaten Data Vault Solutions' future growth. Blake insisted that we resolve these patent issues before finalizing the investment, which brought me back to the conversation with Marcus Rodriguez that I had postponed 18 months earlier. Marcus Rodriguez had been tracking TechFlow's patent activity since our first meeting 18 months earlier. When Blake's due diligence team raised the intellectual property concerns, Marcus was ready with a comprehensive analysis that would reshape everything I thought I knew about Victoria's theft. The situation was far worse than I had originally suspected, but it also presented opportunities I hadn't considered. TechFlow had filed 17 different patents related to data compression technology, all within a 6-month window following my termination. Marcus had obtained copies of their internal patent applications through legal discovery processes, and the technical specifications were virtually identical to algorithms I had developed and documented years before joining the company. Victoria hadn't just stolen one piece of technology. She had systematically appropriated an entire suite of innovations that represented 3 years of my independent research. More damaging was what Marcus discovered about TechFlow's recent business development. They had licensed my compression technology to 4 major cloud storage providers, generating over $12 million in licensing revenue during their first year as a public company. Victoria had positioned herself as TechFlow's Chief Innovation Officer and was being featured in industry publications as a visionary leader in data storage solutions. She had even delivered a keynote speech at the National Cloud Computing Conference, presenting my algorithms as breakthrough innovations developed by her team. The legal strategy Marcus proposed was aggressive and multifaceted. Rather than simply challenging TechFlow's patents, we would file a comprehensive lawsuit alleging patent infringement, theft of trade secrets, wrongful termination, and fraud. The goal wasn't just to reclaim my intellectual property, but to expose the systematic deception that Victoria had orchestrated. Marcus believed we could seek damages exceeding $20 million based on TechFlow's licensing revenue and market Valuation increases directly attributable to my stolen technology. Blake Thompson was initially hesitant about proceeding with the lawsuit, while finalizing Data Vault Solutions' Series A funding. Legal battles could take years to resolve and would create uncertainty for investors. However, after reviewing Marcus's evidence and analysis, Blake recognized that winning the patent dispute could dramatically increase Data Vault Solutions' valuation. If we could prove that TechFlow's most valuable intellectual property rightfully belonged to my company, it would eliminate a major competitor while validating our technology's market potential. We decided to pursue a dual strategy. Data Vault Solutions would continue growing aggressively while simultaneously fighting the legal battle against TechFlow. Blake increased his investment to $3.5 million to cover both business expansion costs and legal expenses. This funding allowed me to hire my first employees, Kevin Park as Chief Technology Officer, Lisa Chen as VP of Sales, and Michael Davis as VP of Operations. Each brought expertise that complemented my technical skills and entrepreneurial vision. Kevin Park had previously worked as a senior architect at Amazon Web Services and understood enterprise-scale data management better than anyone I had ever met. He immediately grasped the potential of my compression algorithms and began developing enhanced versions that could handle even larger datasets. Kevin also identified security vulnerabilities in TechFlow's implementation of my technology, weaknesses that we could exploit to demonstrate Data Vault Solutions' superior approach. Lisa Chen brought 15 years of enterprise sales experience from companies like Salesforce and Oracle. She developed a sophisticated sales process that targeted mid-market companies frustrated with expensive storage solutions from larger providers. Lisa's approach focused on demonstrating immediate ROI through cost savings and performance improvements, making our technology an easy decision for procurement departments and IT managers. Michael Davis had operational experience scaling several successful startups from initial funding through acquisition. He implemented systems and processes that would allow Data Vault Solutions to handle rapid growth without sacrificing service quality. Michael also managed our legal strategy coordination, ensuring that business operations continued smoothly while we pursued the lawsuit against TechFlow. Our customer acquisition accelerated dramatically with this expanded team. Lisa's sales process generated consistent pipeline growth, while Kevin's technical enhancements made our technology even more compelling for larger enterprise clients. We began landing contracts with companies that had previously seemed beyond our reach: a major hospital system in Phoenix, a financial services firm in Chicago, and a media production company in Los Angeles. Each new customer success story strengthened our legal position against TechFlow. Marcus used these case studies to demonstrate that my original algorithms were not only technically superior to TechFlow's implementation, but also generated measurably better business outcomes for users. This evidence would be crucial for establishing damages in our lawsuit and proving that TechFlow's patents were invalid due to prior invention. The legal discovery process revealed information that shocked even Marcus, who had handled numerous intellectual property disputes. TechFlow's internal emails, obtained through court-ordered disclosure, showed explicit discussions about my termination being timed to prevent stock option vesting while securing access to my proprietary algorithms. Victoria had sent emails to TechFlow's CEO describing my technology as the foundation for our next-generation storage platform and recommending my removal to avoid future intellectual property complications. One particularly damning email chain showed Victoria instructing TechFlow's patent attorneys to file applications based on the compression algorithms developed by our internal team just days after accessing my detailed technical documentation during the termination handover process. She had literally copied and pasted sections of my code comments into patent applications while claiming the innovations as TechFlow's original work. These discoveries transformed our lawsuit from a standard patent dispute into a criminal fraud investigation. The FBI's white-collar crime division opened an inquiry into TechFlow's patent filing practices, and the Securities and Exchange Commission began investigating whether the company had misrepresented their intellectual property assets to investors during their IPO process. Victoria's theft wasn't just civil wrongdoing. It potentially constituted federal crimes with serious prison sentences. The media attention surrounding our lawsuit created unexpected marketing opportunities for Data Vault Solutions. Technology. Journalists began covering our story as a David versus Goliath battle between a scrappy startup and a corrupt corporation. Industry publications featured articles about my journey from terminated employee to successful entrepreneur, positioning Data Vault Solutions as the ethical alternative to TechFlow's tainted technology. This publicity generated inbound sales inquiries from companies specifically interested in supporting our mission while accessing superior technology. We signed contracts with clients who explicitly mentioned wanting to avoid doing business with TechFlow due to the fraud allegations. Our monthly recurring revenue grew to $180,000 by the end of our second year, with a customer base of over 400 companies across 12 different industries. TechFlow's response to our lawsuit revealed their desperation and legal vulnerabilities. Instead of presenting a substantive defense of their patent claims, their attorneys attempted to discredit me personally and question Data Vault Solutions' business practices. They argued that my technology was too similar to existing compression algorithms to warrant patent protection, inadvertently undermining their own patent applications in the process. Victoria's deposition was particularly revealing. Under oath, she struggled to explain the technical details of the algorithms she had claimed to invent. When Marcus asked her to describe the mathematical principles underlying the compression technology, Victoria's responses were vague and incorrect. She couldn't answer basic questions about optimization techniques, error correction protocols, or performance benchmarking, fundamental concepts that any legitimate inventor would understand intimately. The contrast with my own deposition was stark. I provided detailed explanations of every algorithm component, walked through optimization decisions I had made during development, and accurately predicted how various modifications would affect performance. Marcus had prepared me thoroughly, but my responses came naturally from years of working with the technology I had genuinely created. By month 18 of the lawsuit, TechFlow's legal position had become untenable. Their own technical experts couldn't defend the patent claims convincingly. Their internal emails provided clear evidence of intentional theft, and their stock price was declining due to ongoing negative publicity. Industry analysts began questioning whether TechFlow's valuation was sustainable given the intellectual property challenges they faced. The pressure on Victoria intensified when the FBI investigation expanded to include potential securities fraud charges. If TechFlow had knowingly misrepresented their intellectual property assets to investors, Victoria could face up to 20 years in federal prison. Her previously supportive colleagues at TechFlow began distancing themselves as the legal and reputational risks became clear. TechFlow's board of directors finally acknowledged the severity of their situation and authorized settlement negotiations. Their initial offer was insultingly low, $2 million plus licensing rights to continue using my technology. Marcus rejected this immediately and countered with a demand for $45 million in damages plus complete transfer of all patents based on my stolen algorithms. The settlement negotiations revealed how dramatically the power dynamic had shifted since Victoria escorted me out of TechFlow's offices 3 years earlier. I was no longer the disposable employee begging for explanations. I was the CEO of a growing company holding evidence that could destroy TechFlow's business and send Victoria to prison. Every conversation reinforced that Victoria's decision to steal my technology and terminate my employment had been the worst mistake of her professional career. More damaging was what Marcus discovered about TechFlow's recent business development. They had licensed my compression technology to 4 major cloud storage providers, generating over $12 million in licensing revenue during their first year as a public company. Victoria had positioned herself as TechFlow's chief innovation officer and was being featured in industry publications as a visionary leader in data storage solutions. She had even delivered a keynote speech at the National Cloud Computing Conference, presenting my algorithms as breakthrough innovations developed by her team. The legal strategy Marcus proposed was aggressive and multifaceted. Rather than simply challenging TechFlow's patents, we would file a comprehensive lawsuit alleging patent infringement, theft of trade secrets, wrongful termination, and fraud. The goal wasn't just to reclaim my intellectual property, but to expose the systematic deception that Victoria had orchestrated. Marcus believed we could seek damages exceeding $20 million based on TechFlow's licensing revenue and market valuation increases directly attributable to my stolen technology. Blake Thompson was initially hesitant about proceeding with the lawsuit, while finalizing Data Vault Solutions' Series A funding. Legal battles could take years to resolve and would create uncertainty for investors. However, after reviewing Marcus's evidence and analysis, Blake recognized that winning the patent dispute could dramatically increase Data Vault Solutions' valuation. If we could prove that TechFlow's most valuable intellectual property rightfully belonged to my company, it would eliminate a major competitor while validating our technology's market potential. We decided to pursue a dual strategy. Data Vault Solutions would continue growing aggressively while simultaneously fighting the legal battle against TechFlow. Blake increased his investment to $3.5 million to cover both business expansion costs and legal expenses. This funding allowed me to hire my first employees, Kevin Park as Chief Technology Officer, Lisa Chen as VP of Sales, and Michael Davis as VP of Operations. Each brought expertise that complemented my technical skills and entrepreneurial vision. Kevin Park had previously worked as a senior architect at Amazon Web Services and understood enterprise-scale data management better than anyone I had ever met. He immediately grasped the potential of my compression algorithms and began developing enhanced versions that could handle even larger datasets. Kevin also identified security vulnerabilities in TechFlow's implementation of my technology, weaknesses that we could exploit to demonstrate Data Vault Solutions' superior approach. Lisa Chen brought 15 years of enterprise sales experience from companies like Salesforce and Oracle. She developed a sophisticated sales process that targeted mid-market companies frustrated with expensive storage solutions from larger providers. Lisa's approach focused on demonstrating immediate ROI through cost savings and performance improvements, making our technology an easy decision for procurement departments and IT managers. Michael Davis had operational experience scaling several successful startups from initial funding through acquisition. He implemented systems and processes that would allow Data Vault Solutions to handle rapid growth without sacrificing service quality. Michael also managed our legal strategy coordination, ensuring that business operations continued smoothly while we pursued the lawsuit against TechFlow. Our customer acquisition accelerated dramatically with this expanded team. Lisa's sales process generated consistent pipeline growth, while Kevin's technical enhancements made our technology even more compelling for larger enterprise clients. We began landing contracts with companies that had previously seemed beyond our reach: a major hospital system in Phoenix, a financial services firm in Chicago, and a media production company in Los Angeles. Each new customer success story strengthened our legal position against TechFlow. Marcus used these case studies to demonstrate that my original algorithms were not only technically superior to TechFlow's implementation, but also generated measurably better business outcomes for users. This evidence would be crucial for establishing damages in our lawsuit and proving that TechFlow's patents were invalid due to prior invention. The legal discovery process revealed information that shocked even Marcus, who had handled numerous intellectual property disputes. TechFlow's internal emails, obtained through court-ordered disclosure, showed explicit discussions about my termination being timed to prevent stock option vesting while securing access to my proprietary algorithms. Victoria had sent emails to TechFlow's CEO describing my technology as the foundation for our next-generation storage platform and recommending my removal to avoid future intellectual property complications. One particularly damning email chain showed Victoria instructing TechFlow's patent attorneys to file applications based on the compression algorithms developed by our internal team just days after accessing my detailed technical documentation during the termination handover process. She had literally copied and pasted sections of my code comments into patent applications while claiming the innovations as TechFlow's original work. These discoveries transformed our lawsuit from a standard patent dispute into a criminal fraud investigation. The FBI's white-collar crime division opened an inquiry into TechFlow's patent filing practices, and the Securities and Exchange Commission began investigating whether the company had misrepresented their intellectual property assets to investors during their IPO process. Victoria's theft wasn't just civil wrongdoing. It potentially constituted federal crimes with serious prison sentences. The media attention surrounding our lawsuit created unexpected marketing opportunities for Data Vault Solutions. Technology. Journalists began covering our story as a David versus Goliath battle between a scrappy startup and a corrupt corporation. Industry publications featured articles about my journey from terminated employee to successful entrepreneur, positioning Data Vault Solutions as the ethical alternative to TechFlow's tainted technology. This publicity generated inbound sales inquiries from companies specifically interested in supporting our mission while accessing superior technology. We signed contracts with clients who explicitly mentioned wanting to avoid doing business with TechFlow due to the fraud allegations. Our monthly recurring revenue grew to $180,000 by the end of our second year, with a customer base of over 400 companies across 12 different industries. TechFlow's response to our lawsuit revealed their desperation and legal vulnerabilities. Instead of presenting a substantive defense of their patent claims, their attorneys attempted to discredit me personally and question Data Vault Solutions' business practices. They argued that my technology was too similar to existing compression algorithms to warrant patent protection, inadvertently undermining their own patent applications in the process. Victoria's deposition was particularly revealing. Under oath, she struggled to explain the technical details of the algorithms she had claimed to invent. When Marcus asked her to describe the mathematical principles underlying the compression technology, Victoria's responses were vague and incorrect. She couldn't answer basic questions about optimization techniques, error correction protocols, or performance benchmarking, fundamental concepts that any legitimate inventor would understand intimately. The contrast with my own deposition was stark. I provided detailed explanations of every algorithm component, walked through optimization decisions I had made during development, and accurately predicted how various modifications would affect performance. Marcus had prepared me thoroughly, but my responses came naturally from years of working with the technology I had genuinely created. By month 18 of the lawsuit, TechFlow's legal position had become untenable. Their own technical experts couldn't defend the patent claims convincingly, their internal emails provided clear evidence of intentional theft, and their stock price was declining due to ongoing negative publicity. Industry analysts began questioning whether TechFlow's valuation was sustainable given the intellectual property challenges they faced. The pressure on Victoria intensified when the FBI investigation expanded to include potential securities fraud charges. If TechFlow had knowingly misrepresented their intellectual property assets to investors, Victoria could face up to 20 years in federal prison. Her previously supportive colleagues at TechFlow began distancing themselves as the legal and reputational risks became clear. TechFlow's board of directors finally acknowledged the severity of their situation and authorized settlement negotiations. Their initial offer was insultingly low, $2 million plus licensing rights to continue using my technology. Marcus rejected this immediately and countered with a demand for $45 million in damages plus complete transfer of all patents based on my stolen algorithms. The settlement negotiations revealed how dramatically the power dynamic had shifted since Victoria escorted me out of TechFlow's offices 3 years earlier. I was no longer the disposable employee begging for explanations. I was the CEO of a growing company holding evidence that could destroy TechFlow's business and send Victoria to prison. Every conversation reinforced that Victoria's decision to steal my technology and terminate my employment had been the worst mistake of her professional career. While TechFlow's lawyers scrambled to contain their legal crisis, I focused on an acquisition strategy that would deliver the ultimate vindication. Data Vault Solutions had grown beyond my wildest expectations, but I realized that simply winning the lawsuit wouldn't be enough. I wanted to own the company that had tried to destroy me, and I wanted Victoria to experience the same powerlessness she had inflicted on me 3 years earlier. The opportunity came from an unexpected source. James Morrison, a private equity partner at Summit Capital Partners, contacted me after reading about our legal battle in TechWeek magazine. James had been tracking TechFlow's declining performance since the patent controversy began, and he believed the company was prime for acquisition at a significant discount to their previous valuation. More importantly, he was interested in backing Data Vault Solutions as the acquiring entity rather than purchasing TechFlow himself. James explained that private equity firms were increasingly interested in founder-led revenge acquisitions, where wronged entrepreneurs purchased the companies that had mistreated them. These deals generated substantial media attention, attracted top talent who respected the founder's determination, and often produced exceptional returns as motivated leadership teams transformed underperforming assets. He proposed structuring a deal where Summit Capital would provide acquisition financing, while I retained operational control of the combined entity. The financial analysis James presented was compelling. TechFlow's market capitalization had dropped from $890 million at their IPO peak to approximately $320 million as the patent lawsuit progressed. Their customer churn was accelerating as enterprise clients grew concerned about intellectual property risks, and their licensing revenue was declining as partners postponed renewals pending legal resolution. Meanwhile, Data Vault Solutions was valued at approximately $85 million based on our revenue growth and customer retention metrics. Summit Capital proposed a leveraged buyout structure where they would provide $250 million in acquisition financing, with Data Vault Solutions contributing our company as equity and assuming operational responsibility for the combined entity. This structure would allow us to acquire TechFlow for approximately $280 million, well below their current market value, while maintaining majority ownership of the post-acquisition company. The strategic rationale extended beyond personal satisfaction. Acquiring TechFlow would give Data Vault Solutions immediate access to enterprise-level infrastructure, an established sales organization, and a customer base of over 2,000 companies. We could migrate TechFlow's customers to our superior compression technology, while eliminating the licensing fees they were paying to competitors. The cost synergies alone would justify the acquisition price within 18 months. Kevin Park was enthusiastic about the technical possibilities. TechFlow's data centers and server capacity could support Data Vault Solutions' expansion into new market segments that required massive computational resources. Kevin identified opportunities to optimize their existing infrastructure using our algorithms, potentially reducing operational costs by 40% while improving service reliability. He estimated that the technical integration could be completed within 6 months of closing the acquisition. Lisa Chen saw enormous sales potential in combining our organizations. TechFlow's existing sales team had strong relationships with Fortune 500 companies, but they were selling inferior technology at premium prices. Lisa believed we could retain most of TechFlow's major accounts while offering better service at lower costs. Her preliminary analysis suggested that revenue could increase by 60% within the first year post-acquisition as we cross-sold Data Vault Solutions capabilities to TechFlow's customer base. Michael Davis focused on the operational challenges of integrating two companies with dramatically different cultures and business models. TechFlow had become bureaucratic and risk-averse, characteristics that had contributed to their innovation stagnation and customer service problems. Michael developed a comprehensive integration plan that would preserve TechFlow's valuable assets while implementing Data Vault Solutions' entrepreneurial culture and customer-focused approach throughout the combined organization. The due diligence process revealed the extent of TechFlow's internal dysfunction. Their employee turnover had increased dramatically since the patent lawsuit began, with several key engineers and sales managers leaving for competitors. The remaining staff was demoralized and uncertain about the company's future direction. Exit interviews consistently mentioned concerns about leadership integrity and strategic vision, suggesting that Victoria's reputation problems extended far beyond the legal issues. TechFlow's financial performance was deteriorating more rapidly than their public disclosures indicated. Revenue growth had stalled as new customer acquisitions declined and existing clients reduced their service commitments. Their gross margins were shrinking due to increased customer support costs and infrastructure inefficiencies. The company was burning through cash reserves to maintain operations while fighting expensive legal battles on multiple fronts. Most revealing was the internal assessment TechFlow's board had commissioned from McKinsey & Company regarding their strategic options. The consultants concluded that TechFlow faced an existential crisis requiring dramatic restructuring or acquisition by a company with superior technology and stronger leadership. They specifically identified data compression capabilities as TechFlow's most critical weakness, noting that competitors were offering better solutions at lower prices. Victoria's position within TechFlow had become increasingly precarious as the legal and business pressures mounted. The board had removed her from day-to-day operational responsibilities and appointed an interim CEO to manage the company during the crisis period. Industry insiders reported that Victoria was actively seeking employment opportunities elsewhere, but her reputation in Silicon Valley had been severely damaged by the fraud allegations and negative publicity surrounding the lawsuit. The acquisition negotiations required careful coordination with our ongoing litigation against TechFlow. Marcus Rodriguez worked closely with James Morrison's legal team to ensure that purchasing TechFlow wouldn't compromise our lawsuit or create conflicts of interest. They structured the deal so that Data Vault Solutions would acquire TechFlow's assets while maintaining our legal claims against the company's previous management for damages related to the intellectual property theft. TechFlow's board was receptive to acquisition discussions once they recognized that bankruptcy or fire sale liquidation were their most likely alternatives. The company's debt obligations were substantial, their cash reserves were declining rapidly, and their ability to raise additional capital was severely limited by the ongoing legal controversies. An acquisition by Data Vault Solutions offered their shareholders the possibility of recovering some value from their investment, while resolving the patent disputes that were destroying the company's business prospects. The negotiation process was complex and emotionally charged. I found myself sitting across conference tables from TechFlow executives who had watched silently as Victoria destroyed my career 3 years earlier. Some appeared genuinely remorseful about their role in the situation, while others maintained defensive postures that suggested they still didn't fully understand the magnitude of their company's wrongdoing. During one particularly tense negotiation session, Victoria attended TechFlow's former Chief Innovation Officer to answer technical questions about their patent portfolio. Seeing her again after 3 years was surreal. She looked older, stressed, and far less confident than the intimidating executive who had terminated my employment. When she struggled to answer basic questions about the compression algorithms she had claimed to invent, the remaining pretense about her technical contributions crumbled completely. The final acquisition agreement was signed on a rainy Thursday morning in February 2024. Data Vault Solutions would acquire TechFlow Industries for $278 million, with closing scheduled for April 15 pending regulatory approval and final due diligence confirmation. The deal structure gave me personal control of the company that had tried to steal my innovations and destroy my career, while providing the resources to build data vault solutions into a dominant force in the data storage industry. News of the EY acquisition generated unprecedented media coverage in the technology sector. Business journalists described it as one of the most dramatic corporate comebacks in Silicon Valley history, comparing my story to legendary entrepreneurs who had transformed initial failures into massive successes. The narrative of a wronged employee acquiring her former company resonated with workers throughout the tech industry who had experienced similar betrayals by corporate leadership. The announcement also triggered a cascade of consequences for Victoria and other TechFlow executives involved in the intellectual property theft. Several class action lawsuits were filed by TechFlow shareholders alleging securities fraud and misrepresentation of company assets. The FBI investigation expanded to include additional charges related to conspiracy and racketeering. Victoria's legal problems multiplied exponentially as prosecutors built cases that could result in decades of prison time. For me, the acquisition represented more than financial success or personal vindication. It was proof that integrity and innovation ultimately triumph over corruption and theft. Victoria had believed she could steal my life's work without consequences. But her actions had actually created the motivation and opportunity for me to build something far more valuable than what she had taken. The student had not just surpassed the teacher, the student was about to become the teacher's boss. The first day walking into TechFlow's headquarters as the new owner was a moment I had imagined countless times during the darkest periods of building data vault solutions. The same security guards who had escorted me out with a cardboard box 3 years earlier now nodded respectfully as I entered the executive suite. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The company that had discarded me as expendable was now entirely under my control. My first priority was addressing the workforce that remained at TechFlow. The acquisition had created tremendous uncertainty among employees who had watched their company's reputation crumble over the past 18 months. Many talented engineers and sales professionals were already interviewing with competitors, concerned about job security and career prospects under new ownership. I needed to stabilize the organization quickly while implementing the cultural changes necessary for long-term success. The all-hands meeting I called for my first Monday as CEO drew over 800 employees to TechFlow's main auditorium. I had spent the weekend preparing remarks that would acknowledge the difficult circumstances while articulating a compelling vision for the combined company's future. The audience was skeptical and anxious, unsure whether to expect mass layoffs or dramatic operational changes that would disrupt their daily work routines. I began by directly addressing the intellectual property theft that had precipitated the acquisition. Without mentioning Victoria by name, I explained that the previous leadership had made decisions that compromised TechFlow's integrity and sustainability. I emphasized that those responsible were no longer with the company and that we would rebuild TechFlow's reputation through transparent business practices and genuine innovation rather than stolen technology. The response from TechFlow's technical staff was particularly encouraging. Many engineers had suspected that the compression algorithms attributed to Victoria were too sophisticated for her actual technical capabilities. Several employees approached me after the meeting to share their concerns about the previous leadership's claims and express enthusiasm about working with the actual inventor of the technology they had been implementing. Sarah Kim, TechFlow's Director of Product Development, had been one of Victoria's direct reports and possessed detailed knowledge about the technical shortcomings in their current systems. Sarah explained that TechFlow's implementation of my stolen algorithms was fundamentally flawed, incorporating design decisions that reduced efficiency and created security vulnerabilities. She estimated that proper implementation of the original algorithms could improve performance by 30% while reducing server costs. Kevin Park worked closely with Sarah's team to audit TechFlow's existing infrastructure and identify optimization opportunities. The technical assessment revealed that TechFlow had been operating at approximately 60% efficiency due to poor algorithm implementation and outdated hardware configurations. Kevin developed a modernization plan that would migrate all systems to Data Vault Solutions' proven architecture within 4 months, dramatically improving service quality while reducing operational expenses. The customer retention challenges were more complex than the technical integration. TechFlow's reputation had been severely damaged by the patent controversy, and many enterprise clients had postponed renewal decisions pending resolution of the legal issues. Lisa Chen led a comprehensive customer outreach campaign designed to rebuild confidence and demonstrate the superior capabilities of our combined organization. Our strategy focused on transparency and immediate value delivery. We contacted every TechFlow customer to explain the acquisition, introduce Data Vault Solutions' enhanced technology, and offer substantial service improvements at reduced prices. The response was overwhelmingly positive once clients understood that they would receive better compression capabilities, faster support response times, and lower monthly fees under our new ownership. The integration process revealed the extent of TechFlow's operational inefficiencies under Victoria's leadership. The company had been spending enormous resources on redundant projects, maintaining duplicate systems, and supporting bloated management structures that added costs without improving customer outcomes. Michael Davis identified over $12 million in annual savings through organizational streamlining and process optimization. One of the most satisfying discoveries was Victoria's corner office, which I converted into a collaborative workspace for our engineering team. The symbolism was important for TechFlow employees who had felt intimidated by the previous leadership's hierarchical approach. I moved my own office to a smaller space adjacent to the main development floor, emphasizing accessibility and hands-on involvement rather than executive isolation. The legal resolution with TechFlow's previous management proceeded more smoothly after the acquisition. Victoria and her co-conspirators had limited bargaining power once Data Vault Solutions controlled the company and its assets. Marcus Rodriguez negotiated a settlement that included $42 million in damages, complete transfer of all patents based on my stolen technology, and personal liability agreements that would prevent Victoria from working in data compression technology for 10 years. Victoria's criminal trial for securities fraud and intellectual property theft was scheduled to begin 6 months after our acquisition closed. The FBI had assembled overwhelming evidence of her intentional deception, including email communications, technical documentation, and testimony from former TechFlow employees who had witnessed her appropriation of my algorithms. Legal experts predicted that Victoria faced 15 to 20 years in federal prison if convicted on all charges. The media attention surrounding Victoria's downfall created unexpected marketing opportunities for our combined company. Technology publications featured stories about corporate accountability and the consequences of stealing intellectual property. We received inquiries from potential customers who specifically wanted to support ethical business practices while accessing superior technology solutions. Our revenue growth accelerated dramatically as we integrated TechFlow's customer base with Data Vault Solutions' enhanced capabilities. Monthly recurring revenue reached $420,000 by month 6 post-acquisition, with customer satisfaction scores improving significantly as we resolved long-standing technical issues that Victoria's leadership had ignored. New customer acquisitions also increased as our expanded capabilities attracted larger enterprise clients. The employee transformation at TechFlow was remarkable to witness. Staff members who had appeared demoralized and disengaged under Victoria's leadership became enthusiastic contributors once they understood the company's new direction. The collaborative culture we implemented encouraged innovation and risk-taking, leading to several breakthrough improvements in our technology platform that exceeded even Kevin's optimistic projections. International expansion became possible, with TechFlow's existing infrastructure and regulatory compliance frameworks. We launched Data Vault Solutions compression technology in European and Asian markets, leveraging TechFlow's established partnerships and legal foundations. The international revenue growth exceeded our projections by 40%, validating our acquisition strategy, and positioning us for continued global expansion. Summit Capital Partners was thrilled with the acquisition's financial performance. James Morrison reported that our combined company was outperforming their most optimistic projections, with revenue growth and margin expansion exceeding comparable deals in their portfolio. The success strengthened our relationship with Summit Capital and opened opportunities for additional financing to support aggressive expansion into new market segments. The personal satisfaction of transforming TechFlow from a corrupt organization into an ethical industry leader was immense. Employees who had worked under Victoria's oppressive leadership frequently commented on the dramatic cultural improvement and their renewed enthusiasm for their work. The company that had tried to destroy my career became the foundation for achieving success beyond anything I had initially imagined. Industry recognition followed our operational success. Data Vault Solutions was named Startup of the Year by TechCrunch, and I was featured on the cover of Fast Company magazine as an example of entrepreneurial resilience and ethical leadership. Speaking engagements at major technology conferences provided platforms to share our story and advocate for stronger intellectual property protections in the startup ecosystem. The acquisition also created opportunities to support other entrepreneurs who had experienced similar betrayals. I established a legal defense fund to help inventors protect their intellectual property rights against corporate theft. The fund provided pro bono legal representation for cases involving clear evidence of algorithm or technology appropriation, ensuring that other innovators wouldn't face the same financial barriers that had nearly prevented me from pursuing justice. Victoria's sentencing hearing was scheduled for early fall, approximately 18 months after our acquisition closed. The prosecutors had recommended a 22-year prison sentence based on the scale of her fraud and the impact on TechFlow's shareholders and employees. Her defense attorneys were negotiating a plea agreement that would reduce the sentence in exchange for cooperation with ongoing investigations into intellectual property theft at other technology companies. As I prepared to testify at Victoria's sentencing hearing, I reflected on the extraordinary journey from that humiliating termination to owning the company that had wronged me. The experience had taught me that ethical business practices and genuine innovation ultimately triumph over corruption and theft. Victoria's attempt to steal my life's work had actually created the motivation and opportunity to build something far more valuable than what she had taken. Victoria's criminal trial began on a cold October morning in the federal courthouse in San Francisco. I arrived early to observe the proceedings, accompanied by Marcus Rodriguez and several former TechFlow employees who would testify about Victoria's systematic theft of intellectual property. The courtroom was packed with technology journalists, industry executives, and legal professionals who recognized this case as a landmark prosecution for corporate fraud in Silicon Valley. The prosecution's opening statement painted a devastating picture of Victoria's calculated deception. Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Walsh methodically outlined how Victoria had orchestrated my termination specifically to steal my algorithms, filed fraudulent patent applications, and misrepresented TechFlow's intellectual property assets to investors during their IPO. The evidence included over 200 internal emails, technical documentation proving my prior invention, and expert testimony about the impossibility of Victoria developing such sophisticated algorithms independently. Victoria's defense strategy was predictably desperate. Her attorney, David Sterling from the prestigious firm Morrison & Associates, attempted to portray her as a scapegoat for TechFlow's broader corporate misconduct. Sterling argued that Victoria had genuinely believed the compression algorithms were collaborative developments rather than my individual innovations, and that any misrepresentation to investors was unintentional rather than fraudulent. The technical testimony phase of the trial was particularly compelling. Dr. Amanda Foster, a computer science professor from MIT and expert witness for the prosecution, spent 3 days explaining the mathematical principles underlying my compression algorithms. Dr. Foster demonstrated that the technology required deep understanding of advanced optimization theory, machine learning principles, and data structure. Design, knowledge that Victoria's educational background and work history clearly lacked. When asked to evaluate Victoria's claimed contributions to the algorithm development, Dr. Foster was unequivocal in her assessment. She testified that Victoria's supposed innovations were mathematically impossible, given the constraints and optimization requirements involved. The algorithms represented years of sophisticated research and development that could not have been accomplished by someone without extensive training in computational mathematics and algorithm design. Victoria's cross-examination by the prosecution was devastating to watch. Rebecca Walsh systematically dismantled every aspect of Victoria's defense, forcing her to admit ignorance about fundamental technical concepts underlying the algorithms she had claimed to invent. When asked to explain basic compression ratios or optimization functions, Victoria's responses were incoherent and scientifically incorrect. The most damaging moment came when Walsh presented Victoria with her own internal emails discussing my termination. One email explicitly stated that removing me before stock option vesting would eliminate potential intellectual property complications while securing full rights to the compression technology. Victoria had no reasonable explanation for this communication other than admitting premeditated theft. My testimony as the prosecution's key witness lasted 2 full days. I walked the jury through my algorithm development timeline, starting with my Stanford research and continuing through my refinements at TechFlow. I demonstrated the technical differences between my original work and Victoria's flawed implementation, explaining how her modifications had actually reduced efficiency while creating security vulnerabilities. The emotional impact of describing my termination and its aftermath was evident in the courtroom. Several jury members appeared visibly angry when I explained how Victoria had stolen technology worth millions of dollars while destroying my career prospects. I maintained professional composure throughout my testimony, but the injustice of Victoria's actions was clear to everyone present. Former TechFlow employees provided devastating testimony about Victoria's behavior during my termination. Jason Martinez, who had worked directly with Victoria on patent applications, testified that she had explicitly instructed him to file patents based on my technical documentation without crediting me as the inventor. Sarah Kim described how Victoria had claimed credit for innovations that the entire engineering team knew came from my independent research. The financial evidence presented by forensic accountants revealed the massive scale of Victoria's fraud. TechFlow had generated over $38 million in licensing revenue from my stolen algorithms, while the company's market valuation had increased by approximately $180 million based on investors' belief that they owned revolutionary compression technology. Victoria's theft had caused quantifiable harm to shareholders, employees, and the broader technology industry. Victoria's sentencing hearing took place 3 weeks after the jury delivered guilty verdicts on all counts: securities fraud, theft of trade secrets, conspiracy, and racketeering. The federal sentencing guidelines recommended 25 years in prison, but Judge Patricia Coleman had discretion to adjust the sentence based on mitigating factors and victim impact statements. I chose to deliver a victim impact statement that focused on the broader implications of Victoria's crimes rather than personal grievances. I explained how intellectual property theft undermines innovation incentives and discourages entrepreneurs from developing breakthrough technologies. I emphasized that severe punishment was necessary to deter similar crimes and protect the integrity of the startup ecosystem that drives technological progress. The courtroom was silent as I described the 3 years of uncertainty, financial hardship, and professional damage caused by Victoria's actions. I explained how her theft had nearly prevented me from building Data Vault solutions and could have permanently derailed my career if I hadn't possessed overwhelming evidence of my prior invention. I requested that Judge Coleman impose a sentence that would send a clear message about the consequences of stealing intellectual property. Victoria's own statement to the court was a masterpiece of deflection and self-pity. She attempted to portray herself as a victim of Silicon Valley's competitive pressures, claiming that patent filing practices were commonly misunderstood and that her actions were consistent with industry standards. She expressed regret for any misunderstandings that had resulted from her decisions, but stopped short of accepting full responsibility for deliberate theft. Judge Coleman's sentencing remarks were scathing in their condemnation of Victoria's conduct. The judge described the case as representing everything wrong with corporate culture in technology companies, where executives prioritize personal advancement over ethical behavior and legal compliance. Judge Coleman emphasized that Victoria's position of authority made her crimes particularly heinous because she had betrayed the trust of employees, investors, and business partners. The final sentence was 18 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release and restitution payments, totaling $42 million. Judge Coleman also imposed a lifetime ban on Victoria serving as an officer or director of any publicly traded company, effectively ending her career in corporate leadership. The sentence exceeded most predictions and sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley's executive community. Victoria's reaction to the sentence was a mixture of shock and defiance. She maintained her innocence despite the overwhelming evidence and announced through her attorney that she would appeal the conviction. Legal experts considered the appeal unlikely to succeed given the strength of the prosecution's case and the thoroughness of the trial proceedings. The industry response to Victoria's sentencing was overwhelmingly positive. Technology executives, legal experts, and entrepreneur advocacy groups praised the prosecution as a necessary deterrent against intellectual property theft. Several CEOs issued public statements emphasizing their commitment to ethical business practices and proper attribution of employee innovations. The financial restitution order would be satisfied through Victoria's personal assets, including her San Francisco penthouse, Tesla collection, and investment portfolio. Federal marshals had already frozen her accounts and begun asset liquidation proceedings. The recovered funds would be distributed to TechFlow shareholders who had suffered losses due to the fraudulent representation of company assets. My own feelings about Victoria's sentencing were complex. 18 years seemed appropriate given the magnitude of her crimes and their impact on multiple victims. However, I felt no personal satisfaction in Victoria's downfall. Her punishment wouldn't restore the 3 years of uncertainty and financial hardship she had caused. The real victory was building Data Vault Solutions into a successful company and demonstrating that ethical business practices ultimately triumph over corruption. The media coverage of Victoria's sentencing reinforced our company's reputation as an ethical alternative in the data storage industry. We received dozens of new customer inquiries from companies specifically interested in supporting businesses with strong integrity standards. The publicity also attracted top talent who wanted to work for an organization that valued innovation and proper attribution of intellectual property. Victoria's conviction and sentencing marked the end of a chapter that had defined my life for nearly 4 years. The woman who had tried to destroy my career was now facing nearly 2 decades in federal prison, while the company she had corrupted was thriving under ethical leadership. The transformation was complete. The victim had become the victor, and justice had been decisively served. 2 years after Victoria's sentencing, I stood before an audience of 3,000 entrepreneurs at the Global Innovation Summit in Austin, delivering the keynote address about resilience and ethical leadership in technology. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was speaking in my hometown, the same city where I had rebuilt my life in my parents' garage after Victoria destroyed my career. The journey from terminated employee to industry leader had become a case study taught in business schools across the country. Data Vault Solutions had grown into a multinational corporation with over 8,000 customers across 47 countries. Our annual revenue exceeded $280 million, making us one of the fastest-growing enterprise software companies in history. The acquisition of TechFlow had provided the infrastructure foundation for global expansion, but our success stemmed from the superior technology and ethical culture we had built from the beginning. The transformation of TechFlow's former headquarters into Data Vault Solutions Innovation Campus represented everything we had accomplished. The building that once housed Victoria's corrupt leadership now contained state-of-the-art research laboratories, collaborative workspaces, and a technology incubator supporting early-stage startups. We have created over 2,400 jobs in the San Francisco Bay Area while establishing additional offices in Austin, Chicago, London, and Singapore. Kevin Park had evolved into one of the industry's most respected chief technology officers, leading breakthrough developments in quantum-resistant compression algorithms and artificial intelligence integration. His team had filed 37 patents, all properly attributed to their actual inventors, with comprehensive documentation preventing any future disputes. Kevin often spoke at conferences about the importance of technical integrity and proper intellectual property practices in startup environments. Lisa Chen's sales organization had become a model for ethical customer relationship management in the enterprise software industry. Her team consistently achieved revenue targets while maintaining the highest customer satisfaction scores in our market segment. Lisa had developed training programs that emphasized transparency, honest capability representation, and long-term partnership building rather than aggressive closing tactics that prioritized short-term deals over customer success. Michael Davis had established operational excellence standards that other companies studied and attempted to replicate. His systematic approach to scaling organizational culture while maintaining entrepreneurial agility had enabled Data Vault Solutions to grow rapidly without sacrificing the collaborative environment that attracted top talent. Michael frequently consulted with other startups about building sustainable growth frameworks and avoiding the bureaucratic dysfunction that had plagued TechFlow under Victoria's leadership. The legal defense fund I had established for inventors fighting intellectual property theft had grown into a major force for justice in the technology industry. The fund had supported 43 cases involving algorithm appropriation, patent fraud, and trade secret theft, achieving successful outcomes in 39 instances. The precedent established by Victoria's prosecution had strengthened our legal arguments and encouraged prosecutors to pursue criminal charges in cases involving clear evidence of deliberate theft. One particularly satisfying case involved Marcus Thompson, a former Google engineer whose startup had been acquired by a major corporation that subsequently fired him and claimed his artificial intelligence algorithms as their own innovations. The Legal Defense Fund provided Marcus with the same high-quality representation that had enabled my victory against Victoria. The case resulted in a $47 million settlement and criminal prosecution of the executives involved in the theft. The fund had also lobbied successfully for stronger intellectual property protections at the federal level. Congress passed the Innovation Protection Act, which increased penalties for corporate patent fraud and established streamlined procedures for inventors to challenge fraudulent applications. The legislation included provisions requiring public disclosure of actual inventors and criminalizing deliberate misrepresentation of intellectual property ownership in securities filings. Victoria's appeal had been rejected by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court had declined to hear her case. She was currently serving her sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California, with an earliest possible release date in 2039. Prison records indicated that Victoria had been working in the facility's library and had enrolled in correspondence courses related to business ethics and legal compliance, ironic subjects given her criminal history. The restitution payments from Victoria's asset forfeiture had been distributed to TechFlow shareholders who had suffered losses due to her fraudulent representations. The recovered funds totaled $38 million. Covering approximately 60% of documented investor damages. Several class action lawsuits against TechFlow's former board members and auditing firm were still pending, seeking additional compensation for shareholders who had relied on misleading financial statements. The broader impact of Victoria's prosecution extended throughout Silicon Valley's corporate culture. Technology companies had implemented stricter intellectual property attribution practices, enhanced compliance training for executives, and established anonymous reporting systems for employees who suspected misconduct. Several other cases of algorithm theft had been uncovered and prosecuted following the precedent established by our successful legal strategy. My personal net worth had grown to approximately $340 million as Data Vault Solutions continued expanding and increasing in value. However, the financial success was less meaningful than the professional satisfaction of building an organization that prioritized innovation, integrity, and employee development. We had created a workplace where talented individuals could pursue breakthrough technologies without fear of having their contributions stolen or misattributed. The company's commitment to ethical practices had become a significant competitive advantage in recruiting top talent. Engineering graduates from leading universities specifically sought opportunities to work for Data Vault Solutions because of our reputation for proper attribution and collaborative development environments. Our employee retention rate exceeded 95%, far higher than industry averages, reflecting the positive culture we had cultivated. International recognition of our ethical leadership had opened doors to partnerships and opportunities that purely profit-focused companies couldn't access. The European Union had selected Data Vault Solutions as a preferred technology partner for government data storage initiatives specifically because of our demonstrated commitment to transparency and legal compliance. Similar partnerships in Japan, Australia, and Canada had accelerated our global expansion, while reinforcing our reputation for trustworthy business practices. The technology incubator we had established at our San Francisco campus was supporting 23 early-stage startups developing innovations in data management, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. We provided funding, mentorship, and technical resources while requiring comprehensive intellectual property documentation to prevent future disputes. Several incubator companies had already achieved successful exits, validating our approach to nurturing ethical entrepreneurship. Educational institutions had begun incorporating our story into curricula about business ethics, intellectual property, law, and entrepreneurial resilience. Harvard Business School, Stanford Graduate School of Business, and MIT Sloan School of Management had developed case studies examining the decisions that led to both Victoria's downfall and Data Vault Solutions' success. These educational programs were training the next generation of technology leaders to prioritize integrity over short-term advantage. Speaking engagements and media interviews had provided platforms to advocate for stronger protections for inventors and entrepreneurs throughout the technology industry. I have testified before congressional committees about patent reform, participated in international conferences about innovation policy, and advised government agencies about preventing corporate intellectual property theft. The visibility had responsibilities that extended far beyond Data Vault Solutions' commercial success. The personal transformation from that humiliating termination to industry leadership had taught me profound lessons about resilience, justice, and the power of ethical decision-making. Victoria's attempt to destroy my career had actually created opportunities to build something far more valuable and meaningful than anything I could have achieved as her employee. The experience demonstrated that principled responses to injustice can produce outcomes that exceed even optimistic expectations. Looking toward the future, Data Vault Solutions was positioned to become a dominant force in the global data management industry while maintaining the ethical standards that had enabled our success. We were developing breakthrough technologies in quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and blockchain integration that would revolutionize how organizations store, process, and protect their most valuable information assets. The lesson I shared with that audience of entrepreneurs in Austin was simple but powerful. Integrity and innovation are not competing values, but complementary forces that create sustainable competitive advantages. Victoria had chosen corruption over ethics and ultimately lost everything: her career, freedom, reputation, and financial security. I had chosen principles over expedience and gained far more than I had initially lost. The woman who had called Me, expendable, and claimed I lacked vision to succeed in Silicon Valley, was now serving an 18-year prison sentence while I led a company worth over $1 billion. The ultimate irony was that Victoria's theft had motivated me to achieve success beyond anything I had originally imagined possible. Sometimes the worst betrayals create the greatest opportunities for those who respond with determination, integrity, and unwavering commitment to justice. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.